This Turning Point review was brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Try it, and TNA will remember that the X Division exists. A couple days ago, I did a podcast with my old buddy Chess Army. Link is down there if you want to listen, where I said that I thought the build-up to this Turning Point-themed Impact show had been better than the build-up to Bound for Glory. And I meant it. The hype for the matches was better, the storylines were better, the card was more interesting to me. It seemed like there was a real effort on TNA's part to get their ducks in a row this time in ways that they didn't manage for their biggest pay-per-view of the year. So I was pretty excited for this one, and there was some stuff I was really looking forward to. Unfortunately, they ran into some issues with this one. First things first, they're back in Orlando now. I've written several articles explaining my thoughts on that. Check the blog if you want to read them. Link is down there. Anyway, I was nervous about this for a number of reasons, but it didn't turn out too badly. They're in a smaller soundstage than the one they had before, and that doesn't help. But they were able to disguise that pretty well. They were careful not to draw attention to it most of the time. They don't have as much space as they did in the old Impact Zone, but it wasn't as noticeable as I thought it would be. And the set looks nice too. I was satisfied with that. The news about the crowd wasn't as good. You could tell they were back in Universal Studios because there was a long stretch in the middle of the show where those fans were pretty dead. And that sucks. But I guess this is the price TNA are going to have to pay to keep the expenses low. Right from the opener, I could tell something was off. This exchange between Dixie Carter and James Storm was not bad. The promos were good. In fact, Storm's was really good. But they were talking very fast, not pacing themselves, not taking the time to let anything sink in. That's because they didn't have any time to spare, which became pretty obvious throughout the night. There weren't many backstage pre-tapes. They were cutting corners where they could. You could tell they were sweating that 2-hour time limit this week. And that's really unfortunate because that did not do this show any favors. TNA seem like they're still figuring out this 365 concept. Used properly, this could be a really useful tool to advance storylines on social media during the week in ways that they might not have time to do on Impact. In this case, they nailed it. The day before, they put a video on the YouTube page of Bobby Roode jumping James Storm in a bar, so by the time Impact starts, James Storm is already pissed off. That's good. They probably saved a few minutes by doing that. They need to take the 365 gimmick more in this direction. That said, the outcome was a little confusing. James Storm wants his match with Roode changed from a bull rope match to a Florida death match. I was okay with that, but they never bothered to explain what the hell a Florida death match is, or what the rules were, which only led to more confusion later on. Don't get me wrong, this was a good match, although it needed more time. They beat the hell out of each other. It was just what you'd expect from these guys. But I had no idea what was going on because they never bothered to explain it. From what I could figure out, a Florida death match is a no DQ match fought under last man standing rules, and possibly I quit match rules too, but I wasn't sure. Gunner throws in the towel before Roode can drop Storm on a barbed wire board, and this ends the match somehow, even though it's no DQ. I'm not sure how or why. This was really confusing. They seriously needed to explain this better. A strange ending to a really good but head-scratching match. I loved James Storm's reaction afterward, though. Frustrated, pissed off, just what it needed to be. I hope and pray that this is leading to a James Storm heel turn, because his character really needs a change right now. Samoa Joe and Magnus Falls Count Anywhere was the other tournament match we got. I liked that they started by brawling backstage and going all over the studio. There were some nice spots here. You know it's an important match when Joe breaks out the suicide dive. This was another good match, but again, it felt too short. It was a strong effort from Joe and Magnus, but they didn't have the time to really do this justice and make it the great match it could have been. Also, the finish was kind of contrived, with Joe basically knocking himself out. That was silly. And more disappointing to me was that they missed a golden opportunity for some great storytelling here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Magnus went into this match having never beaten Samoa Joe before. They could have done something with that. Maybe have Magnus say that this is a hurdle that he has to overcome to really prove to himself that he can win the big one and be the world champion. He has to beat the guy that he was never able to beat when they feuded last year. Magnus getting the win here was the right call in my opinion, but it would have meant a lot more if they had played that up, and they never even mentioned it. I can't believe they never bothered to touch on that. Big missed opportunity right there.
You people are fools!
You know, last week when I said how much I was looking forward to this Joseph Park angle, I must have jinxed it. You'd think after all this time I'd know better. I never expected a match to actually happen here, but when they announced Joseph Park versus Abyss after a year and a half of build-up, I assumed they'd have something really big and clever up their sleeves. But nothing really happened here at all. Bad Influence were hilarious as usual, but all they did was insult Joseph and then dump a bucket of blood on him. Get it? It's topical because the Carrie remake is in movie theaters now. Well, it must still be in some theaters at least. Well, somebody must have seen it, right? So Joseph is humiliated and then he just walks away. As much as I love all three of these guys, this whole segment felt like they were treading water. All this accomplished was showing that Joseph needs to see his own blood to trigger the Abyss thing. Well, newsflash, guys, we already knew that about Joseph Park. Did we learn anything new here at all? Not really. Honestly, this just felt like they were standing around, just waiting for something to happen in this storyline that never happened. This feud doesn't feel like it's progressing anymore. They're not covering any new ground. And I hate to say it, but I think the Joseph Park character is on the verge of becoming stale if something doesn't change soon. The promos from Bad Influence were great as they always are, but I think this show would have been a lot better if they had cut this entire segment and moved it to next week. It wasn't nearly eventful enough to warrant the time they gave it, and there were other things on this show that could have used that time a lot more. Case in point, the Knockouts match. It's week 2 of Gail Kim's Open Challenge, and Candice LeRae shows up.
Yes! 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 Yes!
I'd been looking forward to this for weeks. I've been watching Candice's stuff ever since I heard about her work in those tryout matches, and I've been really impressed. I mean, she's got some pretty sick moves, and I was excited for her to come in and wrestle Gail and hopefully get signed to a contract if she hasn't been already. Unfortunately, more than any other segment, you could see how the time crunch took away from this. My guess is one of the earlier segments ran long because this went by way too quick. Gail's entrance gets cut out, she wastes no time in calling out her opponent, Candice practically sprints to the ring, and the match got even less time than the one last week did. Like less than 2 minutes when it needed 3 or 4. It was like they were in a big hurry to just get all their spots in and get to the finish. As a result, the timing was off, and this whole thing just felt very rushed. And that really depressed me, because Candice LeRae is so much better than this. I mean, she got a couple good moves in, like that leg twisting Hurricane Rana in the corner, but this was not the best showcase for her. If they had another minute or two, they could have done something much more impressive, but the time just wasn't there. FYI, if this hurts Candice LeRae's chances of getting signed, I'm gonna be pretty livid.
Urge to kill rising.
It's so weird. It's almost as if someone in TNA is listening when I talk about this EC3 angle. I say something needs to happen, and then the next week it happens. It's crazy. I said we needed to see more of his personality, more backstage stuff, advance the stuff with Furman Barnes, and they did all that. We saw him interacting backstage. He got to talk a little bit more. He got a different opponent this time. All things that needed to happen to keep this storyline moving so it doesn't get stale. Now EC3 has moved on to beating not just established TNA stars, but TNA legends. And if EC3 can defeat an unstoppable powerhouse and future Hall of Famer like Shark Boy, then every other man on this roster, you know what? You might as well just lie down and eat the pin right now. Spare yourselves the beating of a lifetime, because none of you stand a chance in hell. Ethan Carter III is just going to roll over every last one of you, and the EC3 crusade will continue on forever. Hashtag undefeatable.
And that's the fishing line, 'cause Shark Boy said so.
Screw any hater that ever bitched about that gimmick. I love Stone Cold Shark Boy. Looks like they finally found something for Sam Shaw to do. He has this pre-tape where he asks out Christy Hemme, who apparently forgot that she's married. Shame on you, Christy Hemme. And they've given him some kind of creepy artist gimmick. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but I was getting kind of an uncomfortable American Psycho Patrick Bateman vibe from Shaw here, and I'm not sure if that was intentional or not. I don't know what they're going for with it exactly. It's strange, but it's something. You know, it's some kind of character or persona for this guy, which is great because that was the main thing he was missing. Yeah, before, that dude was a blank slate, but after seeing this, I'm suddenly interested in the Samuel Shaw character, and I want to see where this goes. So next week, Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle are going to put two teams together for an 8-man tag team elimination match.
Say what?
Really? There wasn't any better time you could think of to do a match like that than 4 days after Survivor Series? TNA had to have taken that into account. I assume there's a reason for this. Damned if I know what it is, though. Our main event was Anderson versus Bully Ray. Anderson's career versus the disbanding of the Aces of Ace. And if that part slipped your mind, I wouldn't blame you because they really did not treat this like it was that big a deal. And let's be honest, it wasn't. This sure as hell did not feel like the culmination of a 1.5-year long storyline. This actually got less build-up during the show than a typical main event match would probably get, which tells you everything you need to know about what a gigantic flop this Aces of Eights faction turned out to be. Pointless, meaningless, counterproductive in so many ways, they needed to put this group out of its misery like they were shooting a horse with 4 broken legs.
This is how the world ends. Not with a bang, but with a whimper.
The match itself was good, even though it was also on the short side and needed some near falls. Plus, I completely forgot it was no DQ. And that made me wish they'd done something different with Storm and Rude, because why are you doing 2 no DQ matches on one show? Whatever. I have a question about this. You had a bunch of babyfaces come out to the stage to watch this match. Why is it that not a single one of these people did a damn thing when Nux and Tessmacher got involved? They're just standing there like idiots when Nux is interfering in the match. Why didn't anyone try to stop him? The only explanation that makes any sense to me is that they figured it didn't matter if Bully Ray won the match because the Aces of Eights would mean absolutely nothing whether they disband the group or not, so it makes no fucking difference either way.
You guys suck.
Of course, that also means that all those babyfaces didn't care if Anderson lost his job. How are we supposed to feel about these guys now? Despite some confusion with that, it was an entertaining match. And fittingly, the heel's own Hammer ends up being their downfall. Again. Well, it was a hell of a lot of deliberation, a hell of a long wait, and a ton of money flushed down the toilet with these losers. A 1.5 years of all our lives wasted watching these sons of mediocrity sucking up TV time. But finally, at long last, the Aces of Eights are finished.
Yes! 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 Yes!
Burn in hell, Aces of Eights. And for the love of Christ, never darken TNA's doorstep again. Good fucking riddance. This was not a bad show, but it wasn't perfect either. It was a good Impact that was hurt by some unfortunate timing issues and some really confusing moments that needed to be explained better. In my opinion, most of the problems here could have been easily avoided if they had cut the Bad Influence Joseph Park segment. I couldn't be a bigger fan of those guys, but it just ate up too much time, and it really didn't accomplish anything that couldn't have been saved for next week or just done more quickly backstage. And while I'm at it, the James Storm Dixie Carter segment was kind of unnecessary too. They could have covered all that in another 365 video. That would have freed up the extra time that those other segments and matches really needed. As it is, they tried to cram in a little too much content this week, and that had a pretty negative effect on the rest of the show. Still, certainly not a bad episode. It was hardly the worst Impact they've done this year. And it did at least do a good job of taking my mind off all these ridiculous rumors about my YouTube channel being for sale. Getting scared yet? No. Your poker face is pathetic. You're not in denial anymore, are you? Other news sources on other websites are catching wind of this now. I was just the one who broke it first. Mark my words. There's one buyer way ahead of everyone else in the negotiations, and that sale is coming. Probably sooner than you think.